Again, our topic tonight has been asbestos exposure, and as promised before the break, I wanted to ask Gregory a little bit about how you go about filing a lawsuit and trying to recover a little bit of money for medical expenses, because I know that's huge for folks that are affected by this.
Sure. Well, those are a good thing with respect to asbestos litigation these days, because this litigation has gone on for like 20 years now. A number of these companies went into bankruptcy as far back as 1999, but they were able to set up trusts that allow people who are essentially developing asbestos-related diseases now to simply bring these claims within these trusts. Now, you know, occasionally you can file an actual lawsuit, but you don't really need to this much these days, okay? I mean, the recovery is essentially the same, I think, in the court system that you would get out of the trust, okay?
Did you have? I thought you had.
Yeah, I did want to talk about a couple of things. Number one, I know because I've worked with you and about screening. Tell our audience about the screening process, and is your law firm currently screening for these type cases? Absolutely,
we are. With respect to a person, well, if you would, Birmingham is really considered a little Pittsburgh.
Right.
With respect to the number of workers who would have been exposed to asbestos over the years here in Birmingham, is pretty high. All right. We stopped screening many years ago, but we're now screening again.
What does that mean exactly?
Screening, I'm sorry about that. Essentially giving a person an opportunity to bring a lawsuit or bring a claim before the trust. That involves a complete work history that essentially tells you whether or not a person has been adequately exposed to asbestos. And from there, we have a number of people in our office can work through the process and bring these claims before these trusts. Or if it needs to go through the legal system, we can actually bring them in the court as well.
And would that also include the family members, like we've heard from tonight,
Absolutely.
Wives or children that, you know, their parents or husbands, whatever, have been exposed to secondhand?
It's all about exposure. Okay. Think of it along the lines of exposure. Your dad, your grandfather, whoever would have worked in these mills around here, and they would quite often bring home asbestos. Asbestos was so widely used back in the 30s and 40s and 50s that it's essentially unavoidable.
Now, we've got a couple of callers, but before we get to that, I want to ask you, I think Edgar called, a caller just a moment ago called about having some throat scratching and that sort of thing. Not to suggest anything about Edgar, but there are esophageal cancers, there is stomach cancers, colon cancers that I understand can be associated with asbestos exposure.
Absolutely, yes. If you think about the workplace back in the 50s and 60s, you know, not just inhaling asbestos throughout the workplace, but there's a very good chance asbestos would have gotten in your mouth, and you could have eaten lunch, and next thing you know, you got an asbestos-related disease in your gastrointestinal section.
Are those compensable injuries?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
It normally requires what's called an underlying asbestotic diagnosis. That is, you go through the usual process with the B-reader or pulmonologist, and that person would draw a conclusion that that particular person would have been exposed to asbestos at some point during his lifetime. Once you got that underlying asbestos-related disease, you can link it occasionally to colon cancer, even kidney cancer, esophageal cancer, just a host of other cancers out there.
All right, let's move on.